Street Fighter Alpha Warrior's Dream. This game had it all. I mean, honestly, this was the game where after I watched Street Fighter 2 movie and played Super Street Fighter Turbo, it definitely bridged the gap for the ideas that was yet to come for Street Fighter Alpha. And also, remember back in the day where they had these weird adverts that superior to the whole entire adverts that you see today that play the Street Fighter Alpha. You just got this weird guy that basically was just playing Street Fighter Alpha, and it definitely made them just want to do fighting moves themselves, like the little ads. It was very hilarious, but at the same time I definitely was so interested in where it was going to go after that. And let's not forget the thing of beauty of this intro, like just listen to it. Seriously, Street Fighter Alpha 1 had the dopest of intros. When you see Rose and Bison together, Rose showing that superpower is sick. But going into this thing, a lot of things felt different. It looked like anime, very animated, but it was so cool, the design. But look at that, Bison, wait a second, is that Birdie from Street Fighter 1? And Guy from Final Fight? Wow, I'd never seen Birdie since that mess of a game. Honestly, that was hideous. Going into the gameplay, honestly, there were a lot of changes. The footsies were a big issue when you use Ken. He was just such a dangerous footsie. And when you look at the representation of it, the environments really stepped up a notch. Especially this was in 1996. The art style was just unique, and the movement was unique as well. This reminded me a little bit of a video game that I played in 1994 called Dark Stalkers. This was definitely an inspiration from that. They took a bit of ideas from it because it's Capcom, it's the same franchise. But when you look at the character select, you can see why, because the art style looks very animated. Alongside that, the world is there. And then in Street Fighter Zero, as this version, they had another version of this one where it looks kind of like the same artwork. And it definitely looks cool when you see it, because now that you see the full roster of the characters, it's definitely a lot of changes was going on. But Darkstalkers to me was one of the games that I played back when I was in my teenage years, and I was so late to it because obviously it came out years ago. But the look of this game looks so good and it's so great. So you know what, I'm gonna do a review on it very shortly, but I highly recommend checking out this game for yourself because this game is really good and it's very great. Let's not take away that Street Fighter 2 was a really good game as well. It was an improvement after Street Fighter 1, but the game itself was up before Street Fighter Alpha came out. And the storyline, is very weird because Street Fighter Alpha was before Street Fighter 2. So next thing you know, you see that the sequels that you see, the characters are a lot younger, the environment is a lot different, and also the gameplay elements and the mechanics were very different too. As you notice that Street Fighter Alpha came out after Street Fighter 2, but Street Fighter Alpha is a going back in the past where all the characters look a lot younger, even though that there was roasters that were there before, such as Ryu, Ken, Birdie, Aiden and Sagat. They were in Street Fighter 1, but most characters weren't really there before then. So as you notice right now that Ryu had a different headband, and he had the same white headband in Street Fighter 1, just didn't wear shoes and he was barefoot in Street Fighter Alpha, so most of it was pretty decent. Special moves were very different in Street Fighter Alpha than it was in Street Fighter 2. There were level specials, so you had Tornado Kick or Hadouken, but imagine if you had a level 3 of those special moves. That will create more damages, so the higher the level, the bigger the damage. So you might want to be careful with the fireballs that have been happening in this one, because they create more damages than you think, and it's really broken for me. And I'm not just speaking for Ryu personally, I'm speaking for every character that is in there, especially the one I'm going to get into later on, who is really broken. And no, I don't mean Chun-li, by the way. But behind the scenes though, this was the thing of beauty. I loved how back in the 90s, how Capcom were producing all the characters from there. See, this was the reason why I got into art in most of my lifetime. I was so impressed and so interested in how Capcom did their character artwork. It definitely made me do their art style as well. I kind of practiced how I did my drawing, and alongside that, it was just like so many people were in one room just doing their own artwork and their own art style of the characters that were going to be in the game, to kind of gain the idea of how the game is going to look. But looking at behind the scenes, just so interesting to me because it just makes so much sense at how it was done, and so much I got inspired from how I wanted to develop my own art style, thanks to Akira being part of the Capcom team. Like, just look at how insane these characters' artworks were. That's the reason why I just love looking at concept art in general, because there were just so much that were involved. The environments as well was so gorgeous. They held their own. Even though it felt like it was an anime fighting game, this still looks like it was very detailed, and it was so good. Like, I just couldn't pronounce it in words. But some of them had different environments that looked the same, but they were different in terms of less attendance or more colorful and more vibrant to the mix. But some of them had cameos. They had cameos of Vega and Bison. They also had some cameos of Eagle as well, who should have been in the game himself. They also had a cameo of Retsu from Street Fighter 1. And they also should have got Cody as well, who later on is in Street Fighter Alpha 3. Let's not forget also that they also had alpha counters as well. So Dan being the parody of Ryo and Robert, which was very hilarious. So I kind of rate that. But the alpha counters in this game was something else. It was like the start of a parry back in Street Fighter 3, which you'll see later on. But honestly, I loved. Oh, there's one alpha counter right there. Now, there are some broken stuff that is hard to ignore in this game. I mentioned footsies before, and I also mentioned how weird Dan was as a character. But in terms of characters, there is one that really stood out to me, and that is Akuma. Seriously, in this game, Akuma is broken as hell in this game. Like, seriously, look how...
Shot another clothes if it ran slow. Ain't no way. God can never did shit for me. Came up off that stock, had that recipe. Now I do this for my legacy. Taco for my dog gave me an extra 3. You ain't never seen no pain that you want everything. Make you wanna crash out and say fuck everything. But stuck to it like blood.
But in conclusion, Street Fighter Alpha was a really good start to the whole trilogy that they were building up in, and I just loved how they executed the whole gameplay very well, especially with the ending, especially with the mechanics, especially with all the characters that are going to be in the next game, which I'll talk about later on. Akuma is now mentioned more on Street Fighter Alpha, so now in the second Alpha I hope to go into a bit more detail this time. So hopefully you guys can stick around, because I really want to bring back the series, and yeah, until next time.